Well, hello again. It's Dr. G. I hope you're doing well today. Today, I have a bright and shiny smile on my face. It is actually New Year's Eve, and one of the things that I am going to talk about is attitude. And how does attitude influence us as consumers? Can we even change it as marketers? Are people stuck with their attitudes? And how does that influence how they go about making decisions? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And cheers to you, by the way, last day of the year. So there's different components to attitudes, and we're going to talk about what makes them up. There's also the way we make decisions are impacted on an attitude hierarchy. So we're going to take a look at that, and then finally I'm going to show you some examples of how attitudes are displayed in communications and how you might be able to use this in your job as a marketer. So let's get started. All right, so attitudes are just relatively play a really important part in consumer behavior and in marketing, because attitudes and the value that you as a consumer place on a good or service or an idea is really connected very strongly. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So this is an example that I pulled off of a study from Adelia, and it is a consumer behavior study that they do concurrently and longitudinally. And based on the news of people having an inability to get cars or automobiles during the pandemic has really, I believe, spurred this study. So this is what I would call an attitudinal study, and they're looking at the reasons why prospective car buyers didn't get the intended outcome that they wanted. And so there's a difference between attitude and behavior when we look at research and marketing. Attitudes are opinions, and behaviors are actual outcomes. So in this study, when we ask, well, why didn't you get a car? The outcome is, yeah, we didn't get a car. The behavior could be aligned to value, and it could be aligned to a particular attitude. So let's look at here. The number one reason was that the cars are just plain too expensive. So we're caught in this inflation spiral right now. And if I were in the market to get a car, my attitude is it's too expensive right now. And then my behavior is probably going to be, I might just wait and see. A couple of the other things is that the attitude was, it takes too long for me to get my car. So you hear these stories about people wanting to buy Ford F-150s and they actually have to put a down payment of $500 to get on the list to get the car before they actually order it. What a change in phenomena this is as consumers. So some consumers are saying, I'm not going to wait. Forget it. I'll just move along. So this is an example of how we can ask questions of consumers to gauge their attitudes towards any sort of behavior related to your products or services, or in general, it could be, what do you think of inflation? Or what do you think of a particular politician? And how do those types of things frame your attitudes and your purchasing behavior? So here's another one. I mentioned inflation. So this is a recent study also from Adelia, and the question is, what is your attitude toward price inflation curbing shopping behavior? So the perception, remember, perception is our beliefs, and attitudes are often aligned very close to perception too. So what is the perceived effect? If prices were to increase another 5%, would that curb your shopping behavior? So again, this is an attitudinal study. It's not behavioral because we're not looking at outcomes, we're looking at attitudes. So it looks like a good 25% indicate that if prices were raised 5%, we're not going to shop anymore, or we're not going to look at that particular item. So it's information like this that helps us make better decisions based on, what products and services we're going to develop, how much inventory we might buy, and then also in terms of consumer behavior, is there a way for us to shift the attitude of that buyer based on perhaps a 5% price increase that we are going to take? How are we going to show the value to that consumer based on the attitude that they're going to curb their spending if we raise our prices? So this is great information for us to understand as marketers, and as we develop our strategies and we communicate and try to position our value towards that consumer or target audience. So there's 3 components of attitudes, and it's called the ABC model. There's 3. The first is affective. So remember affect we used when we talked about affect, emotion, and motivation. Well, affect is how you feel about something. And you add that to what would you do, which is behavioral. And then finally is cognition, is what do you believe will happen? So let's, all of these 3 components attribute to or contribute to an attitude. So let's take a look at an example here. All right, I am a big fan of puppy dogs. I love dogs. I don't have one personally right now. I would love to, but I might be going through this particular thought process. Say, for example, if I'm a college student and I don't own my own home yet. So an effective contribution to attitude is puppies make me happy. It's very emotional, very feeling. The behavioral is I'd go to the pet store to play with puppies and pet them and get my little puppy fix. That's what you would do. That contributes to the attitude. And then finally, what you believe is, I believe that someday when I own my own home or I have my own place, I'm going to get my own puppy. So there's 3 components into the model of attributions for components to attitudes. So in addition to the 3 components, the affect, the behavior, and the cognition, we have a hierarchy of those 3. They don't always stay stable in the types of decisions that we're making. So if you look at the purchase context or the type of decision that's going to influence you, you have a high involvement, a low involvement, maybe experiential, and maybe behavioral. And so when we look at the hierarchy of those components of effects is what we're going to explore in that attitude. So let's take a look at this. So a high involvement decision generally has a lot of thought and rigor in terms of a problem you're trying to solve. Usually the decision has some significant risk. So let's take, for example, when you started shopping for a university, you probably just didn't pick the one that came to mind right away. You probably have had years of thinking behind how expensive it's going to be, what is the quality of education, am I going to dig the professors, am I going to live on campus, off campus, do I want to move away from home? You have all of these big thought processes that are very cognitive, what you believe, in making that high stakes decision. Another thought is, what if you were to buy a house? Now that's a decision that's going to have a high stake. You're going to get involved in having a mortgage likely and an annuity payment month over month. So there's a significant problem, has what we call a high involvement decision-making process. So your attitude is going to be, what I believe first, I believe I can own a home and pay this price and stay in that home for 30 years. The effective then is, how does it make me feel? Oh, it'd be so great if I had my own home. And then it is behavioral, meaning how do I go about that process of getting the home? So that's the high stakes, high involvement hierarchy. Now we are consumers, and remember in the first video I showed, we have about 150 things that we have in, I think, my basket of consideration. The stuff I buy in and out every day that don't take a lot of thought. They're routine, they're boring purchases, they're based on just, needs that are pretty basic. So if you have a basic belief about products and services without strong feelings about them, we call that a low involvement hierarchy, a low involvement attitude or purchase. So you have this belief already that if I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy toilet paper, for example, I might just behaviorally go to the Costco and get the one that costs the least amount and, get like 25 in a pack. And I'm going to feel wah-wah about it. Who really cares, right? As long as I get it and it's, it's what I need, it's everyday use. That's a low involvement hierarchy of effects. So thirdly, we have experiential. Now this gets into purchasing products with experience that feel good or feel right. So that feeling comes first. So sometimes a good example of this is an impulse buy. So my donut, I got a donut problem. And unfortunately the pink box donuts is right next to the university. And I might have skipped breakfast before, let's say, my 9 o'clock class, and I go down the road towards the pink box, and I'm like, yeah, it would feel good right now for me to make that purchase decision because I haven't eaten and then I mentally go through, it will feel really good. I like that. I dig it. It's an impulse purchase. My behavior is, yeah, I'm going to go and do that. And my cognitive is, I'm going to have some mental gymnastics later on. Let me tell you, it's not going to feel good. There's also things like experiential, meaning I want to feel good about a lovely dinner that I'm going to have with my friends and family. It's like one of those cozy, foodie moments where you just know you're going to have something good, and then I'm going to act on it. And then later on, I might be quantifying that decision, not based on the price of the meal, which probably was pretty expensive. I'm going to quantify it based on, it's experiential. It felt good. It was the right thing at the right time, and I'm happy. So that's an experiential. Now, behavioral are those things that, you don't really believe in it, and you don't really have like a strong feeling towards something, but heck, that TV at Best Buy went on sale on Black Friday. I'm going to go get it. So it's influenced by environmental factors. So your behavior comes first, and then your thought process, and then finally how you feel about it. Sometimes this is where we feel that buyer's remorse later on. So those are the 4 types of hierarchy of effects. Now I want you to think about your own purchases. Maybe for your project that you're doing for consumer behavior, this would be a good thing to think about. Maybe as you're developing a marketing plan or a promotion plan, a pricing strategy, think about your own purchases, those that are high involvement, low involvement, experiential, and behavioral. And as you developed your strategies for your particular services and products, you should align what type of decision, how high are those stakes, or how do I feel about them before or as you're creating that strategy. So then how do we communicate this to customers? So emotional reactions can create strong, powerful attitudes. Remember when we talked about motivation and emotion and perception? If you're emotionally ingrained with something, you are going to have a strong attitude towards that. So keep that in mind, that might be something you want to visually communicate in your communications. effective involvement in ads would be, hey, how are we going to put that feeling in there? Let's put that dog in there. See the little dog, the dog in the vacuum. You might cognitively say to yourself later on, well, the dog has a lot of hair, maybe shouldn't have a dog. Hate to vacuum, no fun. But the good feelings of the dog sort of negate the hassle of having to vacuum. So this is kind of how you can play with that messaging in these images and the visuals. So just like emotion, remember a fact contributes to emotion. And as I mentioned in the emotion video, we use advertising appeals to get a visceral or a nice emotion from you. Whether we're using negative emotions, fear, anger, empathy, desire to act, it could be humor, it could be something positive, but we use that feeling to get you to not only be aware, but once you feel something and you have an emotion or an attitude about it, you might then behave differently. So effective ad attributes, you have the source, if you recall from other videos, and the source may be attractive or likable, as I mentioned before. You have the message, and how are you going to communicate that feeling towards your messages and your imagery? Are you going to use some other sensual things like scent or music? And then the context of the advertising and the tone has to be aligned with what you're trying to communicate to evoke that feeling. So there's components, the cognitive components of attitudes really are those mental gymnastics that you go through. So there's 3 of them. There's the first one is the counter argument. And the counter argument is the thought that disagrees with a marketing message. So you might have an experience with a product. In one video, I talked about my experience with the Toyota Camry. And because I had one bad experience, all Camrys are terrible. Not true. My attitude, that product will never work. Don't buy one. That product won't cure my problem of being able to, get to work and back in the snow. Now, a support argument is all of those things that you love and agree with in the marketing message. I agree, that sounds great, I'm ready to go, I need a product just like this. That's how you cognitively explain to yourself whether it's good or bad. And then you have the source derogations, which is you discount or attack the source of the message. Like, for example, you might have a celebrity or an influencer that you do not like, and they're promoting a product, and you go, that dude, he's not telling the truth. Or that lady, she's just using that product to make money. So this is the cognitive components of attitudes that we go through consciously or subconsciously whenever we make a decision. So there's also the functional theory of attitudes. Remember, we talked about utilitarian function. You use it to get it done. The knowledge function, what do I know about it? What is my past behavior? Value expressive, which is what does it mean to me? What am I getting out of it? And ego defensive is, hey, this is my product. I'm sticking to it. So if you look at these 3 things, the description of utilitarian really is obtaining the rewards and minimizing punishment. So if you were a teenager and you wanted to get the cool Supreme hoodie, you're going to want that Supreme hoodie so that other people will think that you're popular in your high school. The knowledge is simply, what do you know? What have you done in the past? I've always been a fan of Apple. I have an Apple iPad, Apple earbuds, Apple laptop, Macintosh, you name it, I've got it. So because I have knowledge with how the products work already, That is how I would describe it. Now, value expressive really is my core values or my self-concept and beliefs. So maybe there's a special cause that you're interested in. Maybe you like to get Tom shoes because they give one away every time you buy them. So this is really coming to your core values. Maybe you are a fan of Nike because they promote social justice and inclusion. These are reasons why you're making these decisions based on your attitudes of your values. Now, ego defensive is you're going to avoid all the facts in the world and not listen to them because they don't align with your attitude. So, smokers may say, smoking really isn't bad for me, even though we know through evidence it is. So it's almost like this game we play with ourselves that we're just going to ignore what's wrong. Kind of like my donut problem, like that. I'm going to ignore it. Need breakfast? Go stop at the big box. All right, so we've talked a lot about some very important theories that I think would really be cool for you to try to think about embedding in your consumer behavior project that you're doing in the semester. Think about maybe the brand that you're working with. How can you be high involvement, low involvement, experiential, behavioral? Can you think about these elements that fit with all of those? What about cognition, affect, and behavior? So take a moment to step back, think about your project, and is there a way that you can kind of layer in some of these theories in regards to the project that you're working on for the semester? So that's it. Attitudes, we all have them. They're kind of hard to change over time, but we do our best as marketers to try to figure out what type of decision, high stakes, these attitudes play in decisions and position our products and develop our products to be able to possibly change those attitudes if they don't align with what we're trying to communicate. As always, if you have questions, drop me an email, follow me on Instagram, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm here to help, and have a fantastic day.